Okay. With the AL-HASSAKAH, you said that there's not a no-fly zone, but you're instructing Syria not to fly there. So what's the difference between those two?
Again, our warning to the Syrians is the same that we've had for some time, that we're going to defend our forces. And they would be advised not to fly in areas where our forces have been operating. And that's what happened last week.
And when you say our forces, you mean coalition forces, not just U.S.?
Coalition forces and our partnered operations.
So, but that seems to be a change from what we knew before, right? I mean, are you now threatening to shoot down aircraft that come near coalition forces, that threaten coalition forces?
I made clear we're going to defend our forces on the ground. Absolutely.
Okay. Previous to this, we had not known that U.S. aircraft would engage Syrian aircraft had they threatened coalition forces on the ground. But that's now the policy.
Again, I want to be clear here. We're talking coalition forces and partnered operations on the ground that are focused on the ISIL campaign, Bill. We've been talking about this from the start. We always said we would defend our forces. We have U.S. forces in this instance that were on the ground in that region, and that was obviously our first and foremost concern, and continues to be our first and foremost concern. And we're going to continue to do everything we need to defend those forces.
I understand the U.S. forces part, but you're saying our forces, meaning coalition forces, which is that's a pretty wide blanket, and that means that there are a lot of potential engagements out there now. If you're saying that you're threatening to shoot down Syrian or Russian aircraft that could engage our partners on the ground.
I'm going to leave it where I think we've been quite clear what we're doing here, and that's defending our forces on the ground. And when they're conducting partnered operations, we're going to defend those too. And we're going to. That's the message we sent to the Syrians, and we're going to continue to defend our forces. I'm not going to get into specifics about where our forces are and hypothetical situations in the future. That is where we are. That is what we're going to do to defend our forces and our partnered operations on the ground.
Peter, are you saying that that's only when they're in action against ISIS? Maybe I just was missing it until now.
You know that, Barbara, our focus is against ISIL, and the work that we've been doing in that part of Syria and elsewhere is all focused against ISIL.
On the ground is when they are in operations against ISIS, not any broader action they might be doing separately. Is that right?
Our focus all along in Syria has been on ISIL, working with local partners on the ground willing to take the fight to ISIL. That continues to be our focus. That's why we are on the ground in those areas, and we'll continue to. That will be our mission in Syria.
Understand, we're all really looking for some clarity here, and I know it's difficult, but is there any way you can just clarify these points, because we keep asking? So is it that the extension of the protection to partnered forces on the ground, YPG or SDF, is when they are in action against ISIS? Is that right?
We've been prepared and have in the past used our air power to support forces on the ground taking the fight to ISIL and to defend them, and we are prepared to defend them.
Right. So it's when they're in action against ISIS.
That's what we're doing with them right now, Barbara. Everything we're doing with them is focused on ISIL. So we haven't changed our mission in Syria.
And the Syrians know, they have a broad understanding. I want to go back to Bill's question. You're making clear that the Syrians should now, through the Russians, have a broad understanding of where U.S. forces are operating, and that they should not fly in the areas and where they are potentially going to be seen as threatening U.S. forces. So if you were telling them no fly in those areas, is there any way you can explain to us why that is not a no-fly zone?
You can label it what you want, Barbara. I'm explaining to you what we're doing with regard to defending our forces, coalition forces on the ground, our partnered operations there.
Is it a no-fly zone?
It remains the same warning that we've had in effect since we started our operations in Syria. We're going to defend our people on the ground and do what we need to protect them. That's what we did last week. And to the first part of your question, the Syrians should be aware of that based on the message we delivered through the Russians. They should be, if they're not clear about that, they should be hearing me today. We have, if they don't understand, then I would ask you to ask the Russians if they haven't communicated that information to the Syrians.
Are you prepared? Is the U.S. military prepared to shoot down a Syrian or Russian aircraft if they threaten U.S. forces?
If they threaten U.S. forces, we always have the right to defend our forces.